In the Oscar-winning documentary, The Elephant Whisperers, humans as well as elephants make a gentle but unequivocally emphatic case for the rights of wildlife. It's beautifully shot, this film, and a lyrical exploration of what it means to be family and what is the place of human beings, what is our place in the natural order. I am delighted to start a special series for Ethico with a conversation with the filmmaker, director of this film, Kartiki Gonsalves, and Guneet Monga, the producer, the award-winning, Oscar-winning director and producer. Ladies, congratulations.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oscar-winning Kartiki, Oscar-winning Guneet. Now, you know, henceforth, lifelong, you're going to be introduced like that, isn't it?
Yeah, we're, I think, not really used to it. We're getting used to it. So yeah, so it's overwhelming and beautiful.
Kartiki, let's start with the film, because I think what the Oscar has done is just amplify this beautiful film that landed on Netflix in December, and, you know, then gradually word of mouth, and then of course now with this award has completely catapulted the subject and the theme into the public spotlight. Give me a sense of how this germinated for you, because this is a personal film. The Mudumalai Forest Reserve is a place that you've been to from early years, isn't it?
It's actually home to me because I grew up in the Nilgiris and I'm from Ooty, and I spent pretty much all my life in the Nilgiris. So it really goes back to a place that I call home. My father's from the Nilgiris as well. So it's a place that I was very familiar with. And in fact, I lived there when I was practicing my natural history photography. I lived in Masnagudi and walked through these very forests back in the day when there were no permits about no walking. So I was able to experience tigers and leopards on foot, which is a beautiful experience, and lots of wild elephants. But this really started when I was driving on my way from Ooty to Bangalore to pack my things and move back home. I saw women walking by the side of the road, and you had Raghu, who was 3 months old at the time. He was only about that big, and he had his trunk wrapped around Bowman's hand, and they were walking down, and I was hanging out the car at that point, which I shouldn't have been doing because I was trying to drive at the same time. And here you had Bowman who beckoned to me. So I pulled my car over to the side and I jumped out and I went and joined them, and that was the best time of my life. I had seen larger elephants before, but I'd never seen such a vulnerable calf. And after seeing so many larger elephants and wild elephants, it was really sad to see this young little calf. And here Raghu went running into the water full speed. We went down to the river for a bath, and Raghu started splashing around, and that's when I really sat back and I watched Bowman be with Raghu, and that really made me think about so many things, because you had this young little wild calf who was with this human being, and that made me do a little bit more research and about why this young wild animal was with this human being, and that
and had a parent and child relationship that you
bond,
saw.
This very, very special bond, and it made me question, here two species right in front of my very eyes coexisting in such a beautiful manner. And that's when it made me go back and I did some research, and I found that the Asian elephant was endangered, and there just 35,000 to 40,000 of them left. And that made me go back to understand why Raghu was orphaned, why this specific elephant, because that's the elephant I fell in love with. And it really took me back into this darkness of how his mother got electrocuted, and that was a direct effect of climate change, because as they're losing their space and there's the lack of water, her herd had actually moved into a nearby village, and that's when she got electrocuted and died. And sadly, this happened a couple of days ago where 3 elephants just got electrocuted.
So that was the germ, that was the genesis actually.
The genesis, and I just really wanted to help protect elephants. I didn't want to see more Raghus coming in.
And before we know you today as a documentary filmmaker, as a director, but you were a wildlife photojournalist, and that's what you wanted to do also, isn't it?
I've been taking pictures ever since I was 15 years old, and the first time I ever set foot into wild space when I was 18 months old, I went campaign. So it's always been wildlife at the forefront. My parents have always taken me out to wild spaces. So it was a gradual progression and very organic because I
Both
started
of
out as a
interest
photographer.
as well as a desire
Yes.
to.
I love nature, I
deal
love
with
animals,
this.
and growing up
Yeah.
in the Nilgiris, it's the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, which is the largest, and couldn't be in a more beautiful place. And I think it just stemmed along the way.
So I understand how Kartiki came to this. But when this project came to you, how did it come to you? How do you go from, I want to do this, and then you make the film, you release the film, and then you get to the Oscar stage. And that, Guneet, is really where you come in, right? The magic you make is where it is at.
I mean, yes, producing is an art.
Yeah.
But this film came to me by Kartiki. What I love is that she decided to pick up a camera, found the story, decided to pick up a camera and start shooting. And it came to me after almost a year and a half of her work was already done. She had done the research. She had, made friends with Raghu. And of course Baman and Belly, who very generously allowed us
Into
to be
their
part of
lives.
their homes and hearts. You know, they opened their hearts and they're just unconditional about their love, which is beautiful. So this came to me when Kartiki had a trailer made, like a pitch reel, and with music and with everything. And besides, Kartiki is a beautiful photographer.
Yeah. Your film is beautiful.
Yeah.
You can feel the light.
Absolutely.
You can see
And
the
it's all natural.
reflections and
Yeah. So the visuals stood out to me.
Yeah.
Meeting her and her purest view into telling the story was beautiful. And here was a woman filmmaker saying, this is what I want to do. And I was actually overjoyed to be part of it. I feel like it's my life's mission coming to a full circle. All these years of working, I really want to be able to support more women creators with whatever knowledge and learning I have had, so
and passion.
of course, passion, empathy, and I mean, for 15 years of doing this, so I was overjoyed when she reached out.
I've been reading that this was shot over 5 years.
Yes.
I mean, Raghu, who you described when you met him as this high, we see perhaps this high, right?
Yeah.
And 450 hours of footage. This is not scripted, it's a documentary. There are no stars. People in their regular lives are the stars of their own films. You've brought the light onto this genre, The Elephant Whisperers. I mean, you've been associated, of course, previously as well, but this movie, I think, for a lot of Indians, has brought documentaries front and center. Give me a sense of when, your shooting style. When did you think you had enough? And then I want you to add to that, Guneet.
So basically, in the beginning, when I first started, I was just documenting everything. At that point,
because you don't know when you'll get.
It started out
something.
as just a pure love story of me falling in love with Raghu, and I was just documenting everything, and that sort of transpired into me wanting to make this into a documentary, because here we had this beautiful bond right in front. We had the sacred bond between man and animal, and that was what translated into it. And I think over the many years, we just went out at certain periods and kept shooting. And I think when Raghu got taken away was the pivotal point, because that's when Amu came in. She came in she came in right there, and it was kind of like a question mark, because here we had this young little baby coming in, and that was a natural progression into the story. We had to follow the story, and then it was like one more addition. And it wasn't just an addition to the story, it was to the family, because here we have this problem with so many calves coming in, and it was the natural progression way forward. And I think that's how we went after the whole thing. It was just been a beautiful journey, documenting day in, day out the lives of these people and the community as well. I think over the 450 hours of footage that we had, we covered everything, because we
and
covered.
you were keeping in mind what your research had thrown up and what the larger thematic purpose of your film was.
Right.
So that was at one level.
Exactly.
And the other level is what you're getting daily in terms of the interactions and the beauty of what's unfolding in front of you.
Right. It started out from the very beginning as just wanting to document the sacred bond between man and animal. And that was the core message we began with, and that's the core message that we finalized with. And in between, we shot some fires, we shot human-animal conflict, we filmed a whole bunch of things. We filmed scientists as well, because we capture their lives in this duration. It wasn't just that one bit. And then on the edit table, that's when you really take the biggest call of your life. And that's when the co-bond of the sacred bond is what really stood out. So everything that was not the sacred bond went out. And that was an easy decision, because we have many documentaries on elephants, we have many natural history blue chip films, but here we were looking at something that was so special. I mean, having grown up in India and been amongst so many
You
beautiful
mentioned
stories.
editing,
Yes.
and something that really stood out for me was while it was Raghu, Amu, Boman, and Belly, and they were the protagonists and the main people in the story, your story never let me forget beautifully how much they are placed in the larger context of that forest reserve.
Yes.
So birds, monkeys, tiger, I mean, they're just there, a witness and cohabitants. Give me a little bit of what you were thinking when you took that decision to, because on the edit table you brought that in a very designed fashion.
Yeah.
What was your thinking behind it?
When you are really immersed in the space that I grew up in, that's everything you see. It's not just one thing.
Yeah. So
You
there's a
have
chameleon
tigers
somewhere,
and-
I think.
Exactly. And we had there was a garden lizard, but we
Yeah,
had
garden
like
lizard.
so many different things, and that's something you experience in real life. I didn't want to take that away from the audience because it's not just focusing on Raghu, Bowman, and Belly. They're living in this wild space, and the bee scene especially shows how wild that space is. The landscape is them scaling down this 500-foot rock. It really just shows the perspective of the dangerous things that they do, how they live off the land, and all the beauty that they live amongst. And that's something that we people who live in the cities are not familiar with all the time, and that's part of the world I wanted to showcase to the outside world as well.
Guneet, as a producer, when you have the filmmaker, this is a little bit of how the film has evolved. How do you encourage it? How do you ensure that this continues, to be headed in the direction that she's looking to do?
I think producing is such such a craft that it is everything. It's everything encompassing.
Yeah.
So at every stage to be there, to have detailed conversations, to have breakdowns. Okay, we're going for another round of shoot. What is it that has evolved? What is it that we are capturing? Having those conversations. What is the team that is available? What is it that is Kartiki's comfort, her thought process. Also, we had our amazing studio and the support of studio very early on. Netflix came on board very early on. It definitely was a lot of conversation. But as the film evolved, it was also about bringing the right crew together. So for me to be able to reach out to Doug Blush, who was our consulting editor for even period end of sentence, so he was mentor. He kind of came on board as mentor. I think asking a lot of questions with all the experience and exposure, and finding those answers is a part of producing, and then finding the right team at every stage. So from be it the editing team here to be it the whole spectrum, and then figuring out the release and standing together with the director. So I think in long and short, it is nurturing, and there is it's not tangible. So it's not something that I can say
These are the 10 steps.
These are the 5 things that one did. This is the checkbox. It's just being there and showing up in all your integrity every day, and we are in the process of long format storytelling. So it's so many years of work encompassed that you see in 40 minutes. It's also doing lots of notes. It's also looking at every edit, and sharing, okay, do you think we can answer this question? Do you think we can pull back on this? Do you think we can lean into this? And then having those conversations where something that we feel differently about, and then coming up to something that we all can align on. So it's a process, and it's everything.
I mean, it's immersive, basically.
Very immersive.
Right?
It's fully immersive.
Yeah. Kartiki, I've heard you talk about the fact that you chose the positive aspect of coexistence. I'm looking at my notes because I'm trying to find that quote, rather than a negative approach of human-animal conflict.
Right.
Okay, and yet your starting point was the human-animal conflict, as a result of which the animal is shortchanged. After the Oscar was awarded to you guys, we know about elephants being electrocuted pretty close to the elephant camp that you shot in, where Raghu is at this point of time. My question to you, and of course it would then be a different film, but hypothetically, do you think that negative approach would perhaps have been more hard-hitting? Or do you think this, because you made a choice as a filmmaker?
I actually made a
You
really
were kind
conscious
to- you-
choice
you were
to go
kind
the
to human
positive way.
beings,
Yes.
actually.
Because here we have this beautiful bond of a way forward, and I think that people need positivity in today's world. We have what's happening in Ukraine. We have what's happening all across the world. There's so much damage that's going on, and I think we need hope because. At the end of the day, here we had this beautiful form of coexistence right in front of my very eyes. There are many documentaries out there that show the negative impacts, and me being a natural history lover, I think I've seen many documentaries, and I've kind of gone away from movies like that or documentaries because what happens is it brings out this very dark side
And hopelessness. It
and
leaves you with
hopelessness.
hopelessness.
It does. And I love animals, I love nature, but I also want people to understand them in a different light. And I think this was the perfect story to do that with because I wanted people to connect with elephants. I wanted them to fall in love with them. And I think that's where real conservation happens, is when you fall in love with something, you protect it.
On ground, since you've spent so much
Yes.
time there, now making the film and even previously, what is your sense? Do humans who live in close contact with wildlife, and in this case elephants, do you think more regulation, more penal action, and a combination of sensitization and creation of empathy will need to work? Because, like I said, I think 3 elephants were electrocuted, just after this wonderful celebration of elephants and their lives.
Exactly. This is a long pathway ahead. It's not something that can be
Sure,
resolved
of course.
immediately.
Absolutely.
And I can speak for the Tamil Nadu Forest Department.
Yeah.
They're working very beautifully in this space because what they've done is in certain places they've built 10 feet trenches around villages so that animals can live in their own space and humans can as well. And because here you have farmers who have a year's worth of crops and that can get destroyed in overnight by a herd of elephants. And how do we justify a farmer's life losing all that he has?
His
with
livelihood,
crops, his livelihood, because he has a family that he loves and he wants to take care of. But at the same time, he doesn't disrespect animals. So then you have to question the whole thing about people being able to coexist, but also animals being able to have their space. And I think each step and everything that happens is a step forward. And I think right now as well, the Chief Minister also had looked into the indigenous communities and also given them independent funding, which I think is a beautiful foot forward coming from a tiny documentary like ours that has gone out. So it's not just local change. I feel like this also has had an impact across the world from what I've seen. The emails that are coming in, I think it's reached out to people, not only with elephants, but the animals that they coexist with on a different level. So I think it's just a global message about coexistence, our place as human beings, and how we share our landscape with the land. And I think it can have impacts on different levels.
It's life affirming and it leaves you with a sense of optimism. And I think that's the greatest achievement of your film, besides the fact that it takes us into that forest and makes us feel like we are actually there. I'm going to do one final question. Guneet, how climate change, the alarm over climate change, all of that is like really headline right now. Do you see more projects in this space? Even All That Breathes, the other documentary that was shortlisted from India, does come from a similar kind of space and concern and outlook. Do you see more projects in this space, putting the environment first and sustainability first coming up?
Climate change is real, firstly.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think as filmmakers, we are observers, right?
Yeah.
So, and we kind of as filmmakers tell the stories from around us and what impact us the most. It comes to us naturally.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think there is going to be many more. In fact, my next is a fiction feature around climate change. Been working on it for a couple of years at the script level. But definitely, I do feel around the world, this is a conversation that one needs to have. One needs to double down because as storytellers, we show the mirror. We hold the mirror to the society.
Yeah, and I can read hundreds of headlines, but a film like this can, drive home the point so much better.
Absolutely. I find it sacred and precious, the time people give to see our cinema, anything that we have to say, because that is a one-way conversation. I almost feel really spiritual about it, that here are we telling our story and here is somebody, because we all have so many opinions, right? Just listening to us. And that time is so precious that I hope that can create some sort of conversation at their end. The change, ownership cannot be on the filmmaker. The change is the impact that happens with storytelling. And we've kind of a lot of my storytelling has been
about that change, right?
Yeah.
Well said, Guneet.
Thank you.
And I wish you and Kartiki a great deal of luck. Congratulations
Thank
again. You want to raise your Oscars, or you posed enough with them?
Sure. Thank you. Our pride.
Your
Yes.
pride, and you are our pride. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you
Lots
so
of good luck. We're looking forward to all the stuff you have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks so much.
watching.